join us back here on the Weekly Word. We're on an outdoor adventure, and it has been an adventure. First time I've ever been here, and looking around at things and trying to find a needle in a haystack, but we found it. And we're standing on the side of what is believed to started out as an old Indian trail. And in the year 1854, the way the mail was carried from Benton to Ducktown was it actually came across Bean Mountain, followed the old Indian trail up across Little Frog. We're up on Little Frog right here, not well within sight of Sassafras Knob on Little Frog. And the Indian trail mail route took the mailman on over to Ducktown. Quite a trip. And back then it was like, not like today, they don't run if the streets have got a little snow on them, but back then it was like neither sleet nor snow nor rain nor dark of night could keep the postman from his appointed rounds. And Mr. Thomas Jenkins was the mailman in 1854. And on a cold February day with snow on the ground, he'd left Greasy Creek down there on his final leg of the trip across Little Frog to Ducktown, and he didn't show up at the right time. And as time went on, somebody said something's wrong, we got to go look for Mr. Thomas Jenkins, the mailman. And this is where they found him, right in this area right here. His body was laying in the snow, frozen stiff. So they just took him right up here on above the road and buried him there. And we're going to take you right up here and show you his grave. I'm going to walk right up here on the flat just above what I believe is the old Indian trail. Well, here's where they buried Mr. Thomas Jenkins, right up on the bank above the trail there. It was a lonely grave up here for decades. It did give his name to a lot of things, though. We're in Jenkins Grave Gap, and the Jenkins Grave branch is going off the other side. So he'll be remembered as long as that stuff is here. Sometimes we don't think about where these place names comes from. About 40 years went by, and it was in the 1890s, and there was a Morgan family living nearby up here. And kind of the custom back in those days, in the fall, they would set the woods on fire and burn off the vegetation and pick up the chestnuts that were revealed by burning all the leaves off after the leaf fall. And they were doing that, and little Viola Morgan, she was 16 years old. And the story goes that her dress tail caught on fire, and she panicked and ran or something, but anyhow she burned to death. And I guess they didn't want her to be alone in the cemetery. And they knew Mr. Jenkins' grave was over here, so they said, let's take our little girl and bury her over there beside him. And they did. This is Miss 16-year-old Viola Morgan's grave. Two lonely graves up here in the middle of nowhere on Little Frog. One of them froze to death, and the other one burned to death. How ironic is that? Well, there's a lot of different ways to die in this world, and we're all headed for it. Birth has a 100% mortality rate, and there's a lot of ways from freezing to burning to death and everything in between. I once heard a preacher said one time, there's 1,000 trap doors to hell. And boy, ain't that the truth. It's like old King David said when he was running from Saul. David was running from King Saul at the time, and Saul was trying to kill him, and David said, there's but a step between me and death. And that's the truth for any of us at any time. Our next step could be our last step, couldn't it? But the good news is that there don't have to be 1,000 trap doors to hell. If you're a Christian, they're not trap doors to hell, they're launching pads to heaven. And I like to look at it that way. So I hope you've made your peace with the Lord Jesus Christ. And you're not looking for a trap door to hell. You're looking to one of these days hit the launching pad to go to heaven. Thanks to Jesus and his cross for that. I'm going to show you one more thing. If anybody ever comes up here looking for that, that was the old trail, and they buried him right here above the old trail. But the new Kimsey Mountain Highway came through in later years, and they followed the old Indian path a bit, but you know how they do with the new roads. They just cut in and out of it and stuff. So if you come up the other side from the Kimsey Mountain Highway, you have to look down here and see what we just came up, and it'll take the breath out of you. You see my truck sitting down there, it's almost straight down below us, and it was a steep and slippery climb up here. But anyhow, thanks for joining us. You got to make this trip from your easy chair tonight. We'll see you next week on the Weekly Word Outdoor Adventures.